For a new generation, the sheer terror of Pennywise the Dancing Clown first manifested in 2017 when Bill Skarsgård's chilling portrayal dragged poor Georgie into the sewer in Andy Muschietti's It. But for others like myself, that nightmare began decades earlier with Tim Curry's iconic performance in Tommy Lee Wilson's 1990 miniseries Stephen King's It. And of course, for the original readers, it all started back in 1986 when King's monumental novel first hit bookstore shelves, forever changing the horror landscape. But the lore of Pennywise, and indeed of it itself, runs far deeper than just the sewers beneath Derry, Maine. This creature is an ancient shape-shifting evil, a malicious cosmic entity whom roots stretch far beyond Earth into the very cosmos itself. And that, my friends, brings us into this new prequel series. It, Welcome to Derry, is set to adapting some of the incredibly rich and often overlooked interludes from the King's original It novel. Now, if you're not familiar, these interludes are essentially chapters that reflect Mike Hanlon's extensive research, delving into catastrophic events from Derry's troubled past. Think of them as historical documents, revealing the town's tragic recurring patterns of violence and tragedy. For example, we hear about the devastating fire in the Black Spot, the brutal massacre of Bradley Gang in the 30s, and the explosive collapse of the Kitchener Ironworks. Now, for some book readers, these interludes might have felt a bit dry or unnecessary, slowing down the main narrative. But for others, they are absolutely important. They open up the opportunities to look at certain themes in different perspectives, giving us a deeper understanding of the time in which the stories is being told and how it relates to the social issues within Derry, and ultimately how it enriches the entire backstory of it itself. This new show, Welcome to Derry, is firmly set within Stephen King's It universe, based directly on his novels, and serves as a direct prequel to the 2017 and the 2019 films. Its goal is to expand the vision established by filmmaker Andy Muschietti, who isn't just a producer on this series, but he also directs this premiere episode and several other episodes later in the season. So we now know that we're in good hands when it comes to capturing the aesthetic and the tone that we saw back in those movies. Alright, now that we've got the context out of the way, it's time to break down and discuss this first episode. And yes, you guessed it, spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched it yet, you've been warned. The episode opens in late December, early January of 1961, as we find ourselves in a movie theater watching a scene from the classic film, The Music Man. This particular film plays a very important part to this overall story of this episode. The Music Man is all about a smooth-talking, yet ultimately corrupt, traveling salesman who masquerades as a musical instrument dealer. He tries to convince the citizens of River City, Iowa to fund his idea for a boys' marching band by cleverly preying on their fears of youth corruption. The song in particular in the scene itself is a slippery slope argument. What could happen if the citizens fail to recognize the danger and don't follow his suggestions for a more wholesome activity? It's an exaggerated problem, a manufactured crisis, a petty mass hysteria. Now, you might notice that The Music Man was actually released in June of 1962, and this scene takes place 6 months prior. But honestly, I still understand why it was being used in this moment. The connection between the film salesman and the creature It is direct. Both are corrupt figures who expertly prey on the fears of others, and their very presence creates a sense of mass hysteria within their communities. It's a great thematic mirror right from the start of this episode. Now in the crowd, we spot a little boy by the name of Maddie. Despite his young age, he still has a pacifier in his mouth, an early indicator of a potential vulnerability or immaturity. The theater attendant quickly spots him and chases him out. We learn that Maddie has been sneaking in and out of the theater often, and it's mentioned that he's never been seen with his family. Keep that detail in mind for later. We then meet Ronnie, who's the daughter of Hank, who's the theater's projectionist. She smartly sends the attendant the opposite direction, giving Maddie a chance to hide and escape. It's a small moment, but I wonder if Ronnie regrets helping Maddie after what's going to happen to him soon. If she would have told the attendant where he was, he might not have gone missing. Now, alone again, little Maddie tries to hitch a ride out of Derry. He gets lucky when a family of 4 pulls over. In the car is a mom and a dad, their son and their older daughter. Now, the wife is noticeably pregnant, and they claim to be headed to Portland, agreeing to give Maddie a lift. Now, as they drive, the news on the radio talks about Moscow running underground nuclear tests. The broadcast warns of radiation posing a global threat with potential consequences ranging from cancer to genetic mutations and resulting in highly unusual birth defects. Now, this, of course, is a clear historical reference to the lead-up to the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. This tense confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War was the closest the world came to a full-scale nuclear conflict. Now, the key part to pay attention to here is beyond the Cold War paranoia, it's actually the mention of the radiation causing birth defects. This being a direct foreshadowing of the It baby creature we're about to witness, but also it subtly hints at the potential military aspect or the Cold War themes that might unfold within this series. Now, the little boy of the family is on a spelling kick, with his mother giving him all these different random words to spell out. Now, Maddie notices the girl Arlene taking out a container labeled liver. She opens it and sticks her fingers inside and awkwardly sticks her liver-covered fingers right in Maddie's face.
Trouble, you idiot!
Be nice, Arlene.
I am nice. When I want to be.
Now, the mother adds to the awkwardness with an even more unsettling remark, calling her daughter a harlot, which, if you don't know, is another word for a prostitute. Then the dad makes an even more inappropriate comment.
Couldn't glue those legs together if you tried, I tell ya.
Reminds me of her mother.
All signs at this point are screaming that something is deeply, deeply wrong with this family. Maddie soon realizes they're re-entering Derry, not heading towards Portland as promised. His growing unease turns into full-blown panic as the mother has the little boy spell out increasingly weird and unsettling words, for example, strangulation, vasectomy, cadaver, as Matt knows without a doubt that things are not okay. Now, Maddie desperately tries to get out of the car as the entire family starts chanting,
Out. O-U-T. Let me out. O-U-T.
O-U-T.
over and over and over again. Maddie grabs the steering wheel in a last-ditch effort, but the dad pushes him away. In the struggle, Maddie accidentally hits the pregnant mom's stomach. This leads to her saying that the baby is ready to come, O-U-T. The family continues screaming and chanting O-U-T, and then Maddie sees the little boy's eyes now crooked, unnervingly similar to what we've seen from the It creature before. The mom slowly and painfully pushes out something out of her as the family smiles, their faces in joy, all looking at it. Maddie slowly turns and looks, and at first we see a tiny baby's face. But then it leaps at Maddie, revealing tiny wings landing in the back seat. It flies towards the front, circling the car. As the family laughs hysterically, we watch as the mom grabs it by its umbilical cord, swinging it around, leaving streaks of blood on the windows. Maddie, now overwhelmed by the horror, we watch as he closes his eyes and his ears as if this were some twisted nightmare he can simply wake up from. But the nightmare isn't over. The family and the demon baby all stop, turning their crooked, unsettling glazes directly at Maddie. As the scene comes to an end, we watch as the pacifier flies out of the car window, leaving us to assuming that poor Maddie is dead, or is he? Man, what an incredibly unsettling, disturbing, and utterly captivating opening to this series. This premiere episode immediately grabs you, establishing a similar, truly dark and creepy tone from what we saw in the films. The thematic connections to The Music Man and the Cold War fears are, in my mind, great placeholders that really enrich the narrative beyond just simple jump scares. Now, let's speculate a second about the scene involving Maddie and the It creature. Now, technically, we never actually see Maddie dying. This is confirmed by the one word that the mother had the boy spell, which is kidnapping. This implies to me that Maddie is still alive, having been taken by It as a lure. This is a classic move by the It creature. It's a tactic to draw in his friends that we later meet in this episode. But before moving on, it's also important to point out here, what fear did It capitalize on? We learn early on that Maddie feels ignored and neglected by his family. He's trying to leave Derry altogether. It uses this against him, offering a false loving family and then turning them against him, preying on his deepest fears of not being protected or cared for. From seeing the baby being swung around the car with the umbilical cord to even seeing the baby come out of its mother's, this scene seems to be setting the stage for the rest of the season, and I'm here for it. It is now April of 1962, 4 months later. As we meet Phil, who's plane watching before school, as we can see that he's taking notes on the different types of planes that he's seen over the recent months flying through Derry. Now at an airbase, we meet Major Hanlon and Captain Russo, who isn't excited to be stationed in Derry. Derry, seemingly a nowhere town, is now one of the 6 key SAC bases in the country. Now, SAC was a command responsible for the U.S. strategic nuclear forces during the Cold War. This immediately establishes a micro fear of the season, which is nuclear war. This global existential anxiety will definitely, in my mind, be something that it will feed on, mirroring the anxieties that we see from the children in this episode. Now, Captain Russo takes notice of a restricted area under the name Special Projects, an area I expect that we're going to learn more about as the season goes on. Now, Major Hanlon mentions after 8 years living on base, he's really excited for his family to join him in Derry, a place known for its normalcy. We'll be discussing how important Hanlon is and who his son is later in this breakdown. Now, transitioning from the military base, we arrive at Derry High School and we're immediately hit with our first major Stephen King Easter egg, that being Bert the Turtle on the school marquee sign. Now, you may be saying to yourself, what's so special about a damn turtle? It's Matern, the space turtle. Matern is the cosmic opposite of it, a being of light and creation who comes from the macroverse. In the book, Matern is a critical link between it and the Dark Tower series, having created a universe by accidentally vomiting it up. Now, the movies left him out entirely, but knowing this series aims to dive deeper into the cosmic horror and the backstory of the creature, the multiple mentions and appearances of the turtle in this episode alone, to me suggests that we're absolutely going to be exploring Matern in this season at some point. Now, inside Derry High School, we're introduced to the new group of kids and their vulnerabilities, which it loves to prey on. We have Lilly, whose insecurity is immediately established when she finds jars of pickles in her locker room, which one of them breaks at her feet. Now, the slamming of the lockers as she's walking up to her locker is key here, because it sounds exactly like heavy factory machinery. More on what that means later on in this episode. We have Marge, who's Lily's friend, who cheers her up after this incident. Now, she's insecure about her new glasses, worried that they make her eyes look large. Now, we already briefly met Phil. He's the plane watcher who's obsessed with the atomic age, believing that Martians are in Derry and that World War III is coming soon. His fear is paranoia and the terrifying unknown. We also have Teddy. Now he's quiet, and we learn later in this episode that he's weighed down by the guilt and grief over Maddie's disappearance, caught between his disbelief that Maddie ran away and others' beliefs that he's dead. Again, I would imagine we're going to be seeing their fears being played out somewhere down the line, or at least some of them, because not all of them survive by the end of this episode. Now, back at the base, we see one of the airmen expressing racial resentment towards Major Hanlon, who we see obviously is black, but he's also the superior officer in this situation. This tension is interrupted by General Shaw, who addresses the airmen's disrespect. I'm not surprised that a black man in charge during the 60s would be a problem for some. This being one of many examples of the racial issues I expect to see in this series, as Derry has always shown racism and homophobia throughout the books and films. Now, we don't get a lot of Chris Schalk in this episode, but he is playing a very important character from within the Stephen King lore. Now, his name isn't mentioned in this episode, but if you notice in the end credits, his name is listed under Dick Halloran. Now, for any Shining fans out there like myself, yes, that's Halloran, the head chef from The Shining who has telepathic abilities he calls The Shining. This inclusion is huge. Halloran is mentioned in the It novels as one of the founders of the Black Spot, which is a bar for black soldiers in Derry. Now, this next part might be a spoiler for a plot point in the future in one of these episodes, so here's your spoiler warning. Now, the Black Spot was unfortunately burned down by white supremacists. This act was suggested to have been orchestrated by Pennywise It itself. Now, Halloran used his shining abilities to save survivors, including Will Hanlon, who would become the father of Mike Hanlon, who we know to be a central member of the Losers Club. Now, the side eyes that Halloran was giving Major Hanlon now makes perfect sense. as he was likely sensing the darkness and danger surrounding the base in the town. We should absolutely expect to see Halloran using his powers sometime this season, most likely uncovering the deep secrets of Derry as well as explaining where it comes from. Now back with Phil and Teddy, we get some of that classic Stephen King childhood banter from Phil, who's trying to get a peek of his neighbor who is undressing. Meanwhile, Teddy is silent as he's thinking about their friend Maddie, who's been missing for the last 4 months. Now it's here that we learn more about Maddie and his family situation as we find out that his mom had to bribe Teddy and Phil to attend his birthday, which to me is another example of why Maddie wanted to leave Derry. He essentially had no friends or family, it seems. Teddy and Phil have a disagreement about Teddy believing that Maddie might be a runaway, while others like Phil believe that he's dead. Now at Lily's house, we find her in the bathroom trying to make herself look happy. We see her touch her bracelet, which has a turtle on it, which she says is good luck. Again, another Easter egg pointing towards the cosmic turtle, as we see that this turtle was given to her by Maddie as we flash back to the moment she received it from him. We see her and Maddie hanging out at their secret spot of the boys at the tower that oversees Derry, where guests aren't allowed without permission from the others. It's here we see why the kids call Lilly loony and why those pickles were in her locker from earlier. Lily's father worked at a jarring plant. She and her mother were going to go pick him up one day when Lilly realized she left her mood ring inside. Her father went back in to get it, but was accidentally killed by one of the machines. It was also a rumor going around town that his remains were spread across different pickle jars. This explains the machinery sound that we heard from the lockers and the cruelty of the pickle prank. This to me points towards we're going to see Lily's fear being played out at some point this season of her fear of pickles and what happened to her father. We see that Maddie has a thing for Lilly and he tried to kiss her on New Year's Eve, but we see that she denied him because she just wants to remain friends. Embarrassed by this, we see Maddie ultimately runs off. Now you'll notice that Maddie was wearing the same outfit from the night that he went missing, meaning to me that he's been gone from his home for several days now at this point, and it's safe to assume that he was maybe camping out at the tower to sleep at night. Now back in the bathroom, Lily's mom wants her to visit her dad's grave, but we see she refuses as she's not yet ready to visit it. Now Lily's mom reminds her to take her medication, this having ties to Lilly mentioning her time at the mental facility. Now still in the bathroom, Lilly hears something and believes it's Maddie who's reciting lines from The Music Man, but through the bathroom drain. Lilly begs for him to come home as we see these bloody fingers emerge from the drain.
Maddie, if it's you, if you can hear me, just come home, all right? Just please come home.
He won't let me.
Maddie is its captive and Lilly is the first target of its psychological warfare. Next day at school, we find Lilly, who's still reeling from the bathroom situation, trying to talk to her friend Marge about what happened. Now, Marge immediately pulls Lilly into the bathroom, desperate to keep her from sounding crazy around the other girls, especially since they already pick on Lilly to begin with.
Are you worried about what people will think of me or what Patty and all of them will think of you because of me? Jesus, Lil, I'm trying to be your friend, but sometimes you make it really hard.
This is another example of a classic It setup. The kids are disbelieved, isolated, and targeted not just by the supernatural, but by their peers and the oblivious adult world. Now later, we see Lilly finds herself by the secret hideout spot to tell Phil and Teddy that she believes Maddie is alive and is hiding somewhere in the sewers. But as expected, it's a tough sell. Phil dismisses it immediately, highlighting how impossible it seems from a logical standpoint. Teddy, however, isn't completely shut off to the idea, but you can tell he's wrestling with the absurdity of it all. This scene felt like we've seen this before from the Losers Club. You've got Lilly, the believer, Phil, the skeptic, anchoring them to reality, and Teddy, the open-minded but uncertain one. Their initial disbelief mirrors how adults often dismiss the children's fears, leaving them to facing the evil alone. Now back at the base, we see Hanlon meeting with Shaw, where Shaw informs Hanlon that the man who disrespected him the day before has been punished for his behavior, which to me is a clear display of showing us Shaw has respect for all people no matter their race. We find out in this moment that Hanlon is a great pilot, but his career hit a snag after an injury on a mission where he was the only survivor. Despite this, he's been sent to this base to test a new aircraft. You get a sense in this scene that both he and Shaw share a deep pride in serving their country. Now, going back to what I said earlier about the importance of Hanlon, for those who remember that last name, Hanlon is related to Mike Hanlon, who's actually Mike's grandfather. Now, if you all remember, Stephen Williams played Leroy Hanlon in It 2017, which makes it pretty obvious that Hanlon and his son will survive this season. Now, at Teddy's house, we see he comes from a strict Jewish household family as they're having dinner. I'm not sure if Teddy's family has any relation to Stanley from the Losers Club. Now, Teddy, clearly troubled by what Lilly told him, he asks his father about the possibility of a kid being kidnapped and kept underground for months and being hurt. Now, his father seems to be someone that doesn't like to have these type of conversations at the dinner table, as he dismisses his question and says that Teddy's ridiculous notions comes from his interest in comics. He even brings up the horrors of his family's past, which adds another layer of historical trauma to the narrative. Now, speaking of comics, we get another little Easter egg in this scene where we see Teddy is reading a Flash comic. This being a nod to the director of this episode, and of course the director of It 2017 and 2019, Andy Muschietti, who, if you all don't know, directed the most recent Flash movie. Later, Teddy is seen reading a Batman comic, which, if you all do not know, Andy Muschietti is still attached to direct that film from the DCU. The dismissal by his father, however, isn't the end of Teddy's night. As he's alone in his bedroom, his lights begins to flicker. Going back to turn it on, he notices a grotesque face on the lampshade. This scene calls back to his father's comments about how Jewish prisoners' skins were tragically used as lampshades by the Nazis. It's a direct, horrifying manifestation of historical trauma becoming personal terror, bringing the supernatural right into Teddy's bedroom. The next day, Teddy, now shaken, shares what he saw with Phil and Lilly. The idea of telling their parents is quickly shot down by Lilly, who reminds them that no one will believe them, and she'll just end right back up in Jupiter Hill, which is a mental hospital in Maine that is a recurring location in King's novels and where we will remember Henry Brower was sent. Now united by their shared fears and lack of adult support, the trio decides to investigate on their own. Now at the library, they find a news article about Maddie's disappearance that's been classified as a homicide, with the suspicion falling on his father or on a drifter. The article also mentions the last person to see Maddie was a girl at the local theater, Ronnie, the same girl who covered for Maddie at the start of this episode. As we watch the trio visit Ronnie's house, she wants nothing to do with this, as her father, Hank, was one of the prime suspects. But as she has them leave, she overhears them talking about hearing voices from the sewers. She stops them and shares that she's heard similar voices herself. Now, this shared experience has Ronnie joining them to help. Meanwhile, later that evening, back at the air base, Hanlon's attacked in his sleep by these unknown people wearing gas masks, demanding to know the specs on a classified aircraft. Now, just as things look grim as they point a gun at him, Russo breaks into the room, fighting the attackers off and saving his friend. Now, the question is, who were these masked figures? Could it be the insubordinate soldier from earlier with his friends seeking revenge? Could it be Soviet spies trying to get intel? Or perhaps townspeople uncovering the true reason for the many governmental officials in Derry? Whoever they are, this scene adds a layer of mystery and human danger to the existing supernatural threat, proving that Derry holds many secrets, both earthly and otherworldly. Now, the episode ends on a truly terrifying sequence back at the theater. With Ronnie's help, the kids plan to watch The Music Man, hoping Maddie was trying to send them a secret message through the film. Now, before the film starts, we watch as Teddy, Phil, and Lilly, overwhelmed by guilt, blaming themselves for not being there for Maddie. Now, as they wipe their tears away, the film begins. They recognize the same song Maddie was heard singing, as they eventually see Maddie in the film next to the family members who picked him up, as they are yelling for him to come towards them from the screen. But as Maddie walked towards them, his innocent face turns into a sinister smile. He blames them not for just his disappearance, but for what happened to him. And then the screen erupts. The mutant baby from the beginning of this episode bursts through the screen, now grown twice in size. We watch as it tackles Teddy and bites him. Then it grabs Phil, lifting him in the air, and appears to rip him apart, seamlessly killing him. Susie, Phil's younger sister, reaches out for Lily's help, only to have her arm bitten completely off. Lilly is the sole survivor from this brutal onslaught, as Ronnie, seeing the pure chaos, helps her escape. As our final moment shows Lilly looking down, and in a final gut-wrenching image, she sees she's still clutching Susie's now detached arm. Now, let's just clear this up. Did we just witness the death of those 3 kids? Who, mind you, I was sure that they were going to be key characters of the show, which now leaves Lilly, who is already considered to be this loony person amongst those of the town, as the only survivor who was inside of the theater after it was being attacked. Wow. What an absolutely brutal and terrifying way to open this premiere, but also end this premiere episode. This episode sets up Welcome to Derry series with us witnessing the birth and the death of the beginnings of the Losers Club, and then gives us some interesting adult storylines hinting at a deeper conspiracy, and we also experience visceral trauma that it inflicts. I didn't think this premiere episode was all about the jump scares. It was about the deep-seated fears, historical pain, and the tragic isolation of childhood in a town where evil lurks beneath the surface. Again, I am to assume that we just saw the death of Phil and his little sister Susie, and of course his friend Teddy. The stakes have been set incredibly high, meaning that the death of any of these characters, besides the ones I mentioned earlier, anyone and everyone's up for grabs. Now, things to take away from this episode: I personally don't believe we've seen the last of Maddie. I believe he's still alive, but he's being used again to lure in the other kids to find him, which again we saw at the end at the last moment of this episode. Now, sticking with Maddie, what's the deal with his parents? We heard that his mom Elise tried to throw him a birthday party despite bribing Teddy and Phil to come with candy, but at least she tried to show him some type of love, unlike what I assume he doesn't get from his father, who again is a suspect in his disappearance. Now, Lilly was said to be sent to Jupiter Hill, but why? I'm assuming she had some type of mental breakdown after losing her father and maybe blaming herself, but again, that's something that we're going to have to uncover on top of this trauma that she just experienced at the end of this episode. Now, the airbase plot so far seems to be playing on the fear of the nuclear warfare and of course the scariness and the anxiety and paranoia around the war. Now the question is, what will the military have in connection to it with their special project that was mentioned in the episode, and who were those masked men who attacked Hanlon? Now also, as we discussed earlier, it's going to be great to see how Hanlon plays into the overall story, because one would assume that he's going to be using his shining abilities to help in finding the missing kids, but also help with learning the origins of it. So overall, I enjoyed this premiere episode, man. For me, it was important to open and close the premiere episode with a bang, and it certainly did that. I really enjoyed the introduction, or in this case, the reintroduction to Derry in this time period, and so far, I would say I'm equally excited to learn more about what happened to Maddie and the fallout of that, and the death of Teddy, Phil, and Susie, as well as seeing how the Air Force will play into the overall story. So, what did you all think about this premiere episode? What worked? What didn't work? What Easter eggs did you all catch? What predictions? What theories do you all have? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Now, if you all have stuck around to this point in the breakdown, I really appreciate you all. Do me a favor, the special word of the week to show that you all have made it to this point, put in the comments right now, #DerryIsScary. Thank you all for watching and listening to my breakdown of episode 1 of season 1 of It, Welcome to Derry. Now, if you all have enjoyed yourself and would like for me to continue covering this show on a weekly basis, please do me a favor and hit that like button as well as the hype button for this breakdown. I would greatly appreciate it. Please consider sharing this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show and is excited about this show. But more importantly, please consider sticking around to the channel by subscribing to the channel for more videos just like this and so much more. Now, if you all are listening to this via podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from, please share this podcast, leave your thoughts in the comments below, but also follow the podcast, and also do me a favor, leave me a rating and a review. I would appreciate it. Alrighty, y'all, let me know in the comments if you want to see me continue covering this show and have more deep dives for It, Welcome to Derry. Until next time, stay safe, try to avoid the sewers, don't forget you all are awesome, and I'll see you all soon.